Hello, we are the Association for Child and Adolescent Mental Health, or ACAM for short.
My name is Argyris. I am the chief of the Mood, Brain and Development Unit at the National Institute of Mental Health in Bethesda in the United States at the moment. I used to be a senior lecturer and a consultant at the Institute of Psychiatry here in London in the Maudsley Hospital until about 18 months ago. And my association with the journal goes a long time back when I was a trainee. And the journal helped me make sense at the time. It was a kind of a comfort read, helping me make sense of what seemed a very chaotic world in the clinic at the time. So it suggested to me that there was the possibility of rigor, of scientific rigor, applied to the clinical work with children with mental health problems, and that was very crucial at the time. And it influenced my decision to do academic work in this area. It was also since, well, my relationship has grown since, of course, with the journal, partly because I published, I think my very first paper in child psychiatry, published elsewhere before, but my very first paper in child psychiatry was published there in 2009. And it was like a dream come true, after just being a reader of the journal to also become one of the authors. And then it was, I think, 3 or 4 years later that I became one of the joint editors, one of the editors of JCPP, and Edmund Shanuga-Bark, the current editor-in-chief, asked me to join, and that was a great honour. And again, it was quite unimaginable when I was a trainee that this would happen. So that also gave me the opportunity to have a look at the inside workings of science and scientific publishing, which was quite remarkable in many ways. So I discovered that, of course, it's a very serious business, a very important business, and everyone is very, very committed to it, but it's also great fun, and it's a forum of very robust and good quality and enjoyable scientific discussion and deliberation, as is happening today in the room next door at the editorial meeting this year. Well, I have a biased view, of course, because I'm one of the editors, so I think the journal is amazing and it's going from strength to strength. But looking at objective indicators, and for what they're worth, they also suggest that. So the citations per paper, the total number of citations per year, have been increasing. It is within the 10 best journals in psychiatry at the moment. That's a real achievement, and there are about 150 journals in psychiatry, I believe, so it's in the top 10. It's really an amazing achievement for an area, for a discipline like child and adolescent psychiatry, which was until not too long ago very neglected. So I think it has a major influence. I also think that it has an influence on policy making, perhaps more in Britain than in other countries at the moment, but it does have an influence on policy making. And thinking about public health more generally, and because it has a decidedly international perspective, and that's very, very important. It has produced some fine papers about global mental health, and is continuing to do so. So there's a strong emphasis on that, and I think that gives it the kind of the international edge, if you like. So this is, and this is thanks to some very clever and thoughtful decisions made by Edmund and other people over the years. More than I do right now. When I had a canon of papers for my trainees, and I created this on the basis of what I had read, which was very important, and of course the new stuff that was coming along, that was I thought of a similar quality. So within that canon of papers, with that very kind of tight selection of papers, there were several that came from JCPP. In fact, I think the majority came from JCPP. The reason being that it's one of the very few journals that takes such a developmental perspective on problems. So, and that's what's been missing from both training and kind of general understanding of psychiatric illness over the years. It's also interdisciplinary. That's another thing that we mustn't forget. So it isn't the journals of psychiatry, the journals of psychology, the journals of education, and they're usually quite, these worlds don't always talk to each other. JCPP makes that possible, and it's as the title suggests. And that's another thing that has been particularly helpful. So I'm kind of somehow reluctant to choose one particular paper. There have been many. If you think about it, the majority of children with mental health problems live outside the developed world. So just in terms of, just because the majority of children just live outside of what is the developed or high income countries, or whatever terminology one uses. So it therefore follows that if one wanted to maximize the well-being and the happiness of people on Earth, then that would be the next logical step is to look at low middle income countries. It makes sense. So from that point of view, from the point of view of kind of doing the right thing, it's important. But there are other considerations as well. Variations between countries are informative about etiology, about mechanisms. So if the frequency of occurrence of a problem is different between two countries, that may tell you why that is. Observing what happens in war and famine and what implications that has for mental health problems can be very informative across settings. So you introduce variability into the research that can be informative. There's a third reason, of course, which is that things can become stale if it is the same kind of the same researchers doing the same thing all the time. So it's good to bring in other players and people with other ideas and from different backgrounds. So that's very important. The challenge is sometimes to have to be able to maintain the standard, the rigorous standards of JCPP when opening up to as many people as possible. So that is always a fine balance, but I think that that the editorial staff are very supportive, and so we strongly encourage submissions from other countries, or the collaboration for that matter, of people in other countries with established research groups elsewhere. So either model works fine, and indeed we have seen some very important. I think I would even say that one of the most important papers in the last couple of years was from a low middle income country, and it's been an international success. Yeah, so I'm interested in adolescent depression. So depression is one of the most important public health problems, of course, and kind of one of the leading causes of the global burden of disease. Its maximum incidence is in adolescents and young adults, so the most new cases start then. So I'm trying to find answers to some of the key problems of what makes people depressed, some people depressed and others not. So I am looking at what is called pathophysiological mechanisms, so not necessarily the first causes of depression, but what happens down the line, what happens in the brain in particular. And I'm interested in the motivational aspects of depression, the thing that, why can't you get up in the morning and go to school or go to work, or, why can't you be bothered to go to the cinema or see your girlfriend or whatever. So those sorts of things, and there's in the current terminology, reward processing is the word. So how do you process things that are rewarding or things that are punishing, for that matter? So I'm trying to understand the brain basis of those problems, and we've made some significant advances in the sense that we can find brain signatures of problems with reward in people with depression, but we need to drill down more. So, and I think that one of the directions that the journal may be adding to what it does already is some more of the brain science that underlies, or should inform our discipline. So I think that's hugely exciting, because it has a lot of potential for both developing kind of objective markers, as in other branches of medicine, but also for developing new treatments. Now, of course, one has to be critical, and this is where JCPP's role is so crucial. So we don't want to sell brain science as kind of the one thing that is important for the future, because there are a number of things that we need to be critical about, including the analytical steps involved. So JCPP has a major role to play in that area, I think.
To be part of the advancement of child and adolescent mental health, visit www.acamh.org.